On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, I have on Jonathan Gault, a staff writer for Let'sRun.com, as we discuss the Mary Cain allegations against Alberto Salazar and the Nike Oregon Project, the Diamond League and their elimination of more events, and what is the future of the Diamond League if it's the way to go for track and field athletes in the future. And he's a Boston fan, so we talk about the New England Patriots because he's a big time football fan. And without any further ado, everybody, enjoy the show. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I'm your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. And with me today is, I believe, my first ever person that writes about the sport that I did in college and in high school, which is fun because I don't get to talk to as many people that are avid about running, cross country, track and field. So it's going to be a nice change of pace to have someone like that on here. It is Jonathan Gault, staff writer at Let'sRun.com. What's going on, Jonathan?
Not much. Thanks for having me on, Alex. I guess I feel somewhat honored if I'm the first track writer to appear. I'm glad that the sport's getting some attention, kind of mainstream.
Yeah. I've had I had Corey Crawford of Rutgers. I've had Maurice Green. I've had Kadivus Robinson on here, but you're the first writer that I've had on. So it's nice to have someone that is actually a fan of the sport like I am, because I feel like we're kind of unicorns. There's a lot of people that run, but there aren't a lot of people who will take the time to sit down and watch the Prefontaine Classic from start to finish. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a bummer too, because it's definitely a passionate fan base. But the thing is, like, I always tell people, if you could just get an average sports fan to sort of follow the 800 meters and just really get into that event, I really don't understand, like, okay, some of these other events, like maybe, not to sort of stomp on the discus after it was just eliminated from the Diamond League, but the discus is not like the most popular event, and I can get how some average sports fans might not be into it. But like, you watch an 800-meter race, 2 minutes of just like all the different body types, all the crazy moves, or everything. You have very little margin for error in that race. I mean, I can't see how regular sports fans couldn't enjoy that race.
So we can get on our diatribes probably with our second major topic here, because I feel like what we just talked about right there is definitely going to encompass our second major topic. I want to go off the top with something that has definitely shaken up the whole running world, not only track, but the whole running world. Phenom in the sport, Mary Cain, she was one of the, if not the best female high school athlete in American history in middle distance. She's a monster, still is a monster to this day, but she, 17 years old, goes pro, joins with the Nike Oregon Project and Alberto Salazar, and has some good moments, but noticeably, I think to all of us that followed it, never took the strides as a pro that we all expected her to take. She came out recently on an Instagram video, I believe, and lobbied some serious allegations towards Alberto Salazar, the head coach and the director of that whole entire program, where she said she was physically, emotionally abused. She was told she was fat. She was berated when she didn't have good races. And overall just complained about the environment and said it caused her to cut and a lot of things, and there was very little support. This comes on the back of Alberto Salazar's 4-year ban for basically using banned substances and teetering that line a little bit too much in terms of experimenting with his athletes and what substances to use. You broke a lot of this stuff. I saw a lot of your tweets. You're the person I really followed as the point person to go to for any of the updates. What can you tell us about the Mary Cain allegations and right now where it stands with her against Alberto Salazar and the now defunct Nike Oregon Project?
Yeah, so, well, I'll give credit. I've definitely been tweeting about it because it's been the sort of big story in the running world for the last 2 weeks. But Lindsay Krause of the New York Times, she's the one who actually broke the story with Cain. It was about a 7-minute video, I think, that they ran on their op-ed section of their website, and really just Cain sort of opening a vein and, explaining, like you said, all the stuff that's happening to her. And I think where we're at now is we're seeing a lot of other women have come forward and sort of shared their experiences with weight in the sport and with the Nike Oregon Project specifically. I know that Jackie Reason's come out. Cara Gouch has already talked about that sort of thing, about just how sort of obsessed Salazar was with weight.
And Ryan Goucher as well, who also ran for Nike Oregon Project, and Alberto Salazar said that that was also comments made to him. So it wasn't necessarily only the females, but it was definitely felt more by the females, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the interesting thing now is, like, you know, Mary has sort of gone on a media tour and she's done national TV shows and, you know, I think Good Morning America, maybe NBC News. She's done some other podcasts. And the thing she's calling for is an independent investigation of Nike and the culture that sort of allowed this weight shaming and, you know, weight at all cost mentality to fester. And that's something that I think Cara Goucher and definitely some other people have sort of supported, that Nike, they are conducting an internal investigation, but I think Mary doesn't trust them sort of after the way she was treated to handle it properly. So that's the sort of the next step here is, will Nike allow someone else to investigate it? Will someone else even be willing to investigate it? Or will we just get this internal investigation of Nike looking over itself?
So a few things to unpack there, because I ran. Did you run ever? Because normally people that like running did run at some point. So were you ever a distance runner or runner, Jonathan?
Yeah, well, I ran in high school, and then I ran 4 years of cross country and track at Dartmouth College as well. So I did.
You were at a good college.
Well,
Dartmouth has a very good program there and a very good history. I ran over at Marist College, so our coaches actually are very friendly, Marist and Dartmouth. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just saying Northeast region rivals.
Absolutely, and I'll be at IC4As this weekend over at Van Cortlandt, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, enjoy it. That's a great cross country course.
Oh, I love it. But so overall, you and I both know in the sport, especially for distance running, weight management has always been kind of a big part of it. And I know a lot of the distance coaches hate it when their distance athletes put on bulk or put on any sort of weight, because there is that prime running weight that we all strive to get in. And we know kind of where our range is in terms of our best running weight. And it's something that it's kind of, I think all coaches kind of preach it, but from what we've seen recently, and not even recently, just throughout Alberto Salazar's history, is he's kind of a mean SOB. So it's not surprising that his style would be degrading, but I think, you know, it's kind of, I'm not defending Alberto Salazar. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here from just coming from the culture of running and knowing that target weight is something that, you know, us as runners also stress on, because we'll be looking at it going, you know, I know that I had for a little while would step on the scale and go, you know what, I'm about 3 or 4 pounds over race weight. I need to do something, you know? So it's kind of a weird situation there where I don't necessarily, I'm curious how it's going to affect the culture in running and especially in distance running, because like I said, I think we all know that race weight's a thing if you're a runner. And I don't know how it's going to go from there, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's kind of a taboo topic, I think, sometimes with coaches. Like, everyone knows in the sport, every runner knows that weight's important, you know, and
especially distance runners, every extra pound is a lot of extra weight to carry in a race.
Yeah. No, to act that it's not an important factor would be foolish, but I think the issue with Alberto, in part, is that he was just looking at arbitrary numbers. I don't think there was any sort of – he was just saying you have to be – 114 pounds, or he told Tara Welling, like, you know, you have to be 100 pounds, and those are the numbers that he's sort of just plucked out of thin air for people to hit. But I think what Mary coming forward and bringing this topic into the public consciousness does is maybe that it makes it, we start a conversation about how coaches and athletes have this conversation about weight, because I think a lot of coaches will be scared to bring this topic up to athletes. They don't know how it's going to be received. But I think there needs to be a healthy way for a coach to address this issue with an athlete, not to, you know, fat shame them, but just to say, like, you know, you might need to lose a pound or something, you know, something like that. I think that needs to be a healthy way to address weight in the sport. And my hope is that, you know, we can start having those conversations about what is the best way to do that.
You know, and I feel like there is more constructive ways, and I feel like the results kind of speak for themselves if you're a coach. You can look at results. You can look at past results where they were a little more successful. and then kind of correlate it to the slump and kind of bring up, okay, what are your eating habits currently? Your training has been pretty consistent. So there's something else besides what our current training plan is because the results aren't there. So what are your eating habits? What are your sleeping habits? And I think from there you can kind of gain, get around to that topic in a more roundabout way than just coming out and saying, hey, you look fat now.
Right.
You're looking fat. Let's figure something out. Because, ultimately, and, I'm a little more old school where being out front is kind of more my way, but you also need to know the athletes you're talking to. If you have a relationship with an athlete, you can kind of come out and say, hey, listen, what are you doing? And then there's other athletes where you do have to dance around it a little more and go, hey, have you been having more late nights? Is there a little more problems going on? What can we do for you? I feel like you said, Salazar had that disconnect where there wasn't that emotional relationship with his athletes.
Yeah, he didn't realize he was working with a 17-year-old high school girl and that he shouldn't be treating her the same way as he would with a 25-year-old
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point that you made there about just knowing the athlete and how to approach it that sort of way.
Now, in his defense, he did come out, and again, the jury's still out. Her allegations are there. They seem terrible. All of us in the running community, I know there's very few fans or very little love lost for Alberto Salazar, me included, because his results were great. I enjoyed Nike Oregon Project. Now that we're coming out more of what's going on, it makes me more skeptical, especially with Galen Rupp. But I enjoyed the fact that the Nike Oregon Project put world-class athletes in American distance running that we haven't seen before competing with a lot of the other nations. But I digress from there. He came out and defended himself. And he said, the training plans, the nutrition plans were very heavily involved with her family, both her mother and her father. Her father's a physician, and basically said that they had to sign off on everything, that they were heavily involved and they signed off on a lot, if not everything. And I'm curious if there's records there, if there is ways where there's nutrition plans that they have either signed off or there's the record there, and what transgression happened there, because Mary Cain's allegations are serious, but at the current moment until an investigation is completed either by Nike or by, hopefully, if they do agree to let an outer group come in, they can see what's going on. But, Salazar defended himself. So we can't I just don't want to demonize him without completely getting everything, even though he seems like the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, it'd be good to hear some of that information, wait till the investigation's over for it to come out. But at the same time, I think some of the stuff he did is pretty indefensible. I mean, it seemed like he was just making her feel bad about herself and her weight, and seemed like he was fairly indifferent once she told him, at it wasn't Mount Sec. It was the Oxy track and field meet in 2015. She told him and Darren Treasure, the NOP, quote unquote, sports psychologist, that she was cutting herself, and she basically said he seemed pretty indifferent to it, and they just said they wanted to go to bed. So I think some of the behavior Mary's alleged, I think, is pretty inexcusable. Others, I don't know. I guess you want to wait to see the investigation, but I think it's pretty clear who the bad guy is here.
It does look bad, and I do have to say it does say, and I don't want to demonize the athletes too much, but it does say a little bit about her fellow Nike Oregon Project athletes, because you and I both know, coming from the running culture, when we're on the track, when we're on the course, we're competitors. But the difference between running and any other sport is the pain felt by the first place athlete kicking in as hard as they can is the same pain as the last place athlete, as long as you both gave it your all. That pain is the same. We all know what we go through. And for them to kind of, if it was that blatant and happening to everyone, for the adults that were in that program to kind of turn a blind eye is kind of screwed up on their part too. I'm not going to sit there and, if Salazar's wrong, he's wrong, but some of the adults in the room should have probably stepped up as well in that situation.
Well, I think a lot of the athletes, though, they didn't realize quite how bad it was. I think we've seen some come out and apologize and said, they wish they had done more, and they wish they had sort of been more attentive to Mary and paid her more attention. I think Cam Levins comes to mind as one of them. But the thing, I don't think that they knew she was cutting herself. And I don't know. I think it's a difficult spot. You get this 17-year-old kid who's brought into your group, and she's like you in that she has the running ability, but she's not like you in that she's just a kid and you're an adult. But yeah, I think, it would have been nice if, I think maybe they've been a little bit more supportive. Who knows if this would have still happened or not, but yeah, it's interesting. It's something to think about.
It's a fragile situation. It kind of says you whether or not these young, phenomenal high school athletes should go pro so early, because there is that differing in just everything in the stages of life that people are in, that kind of a 17-year-old girl is not going to be able to connect to the 27-year-old that have two, besides their running acumen, have two different things going on. Now, one thing I have to ask you, the unfortunate part about running in our sport is there have been these big scandals. There have been steroids, HGH, blood doping, and a lot of different types of cheating. And it seems to always get brushed under the rug. The moment another Olympics comes, we all fall in love again. And it's always mentioned and this and that. And we all know, but it's kind of but that was a great race. We're hoping that they're clean. The test will go positive, but what a great race by so-and-so. And do you see real change coming out of this? That, like I said, we've seen scandals before in our sport, in track and field and cross country. And it's kind of just been the next great race comes and it's a little bit of amnesia. Like, what was the result? Oh, okay, cool. Or do you see real change coming out of this?
I hope so. I'd like to think so, because the response has been, I would say, overwhelming from a lot of people in the sport. And I guess the big question for me is, will Nike implement any changes? Because they pour so much money into the sport and they sponsor so many of the athletes in the United States and abroad. They can have a chance, opportunity here to be leaders on this issue. But if they don't take it, maybe we won't see much progress. So I think the opportunity is certainly there. It seems like there's a lot of people in the sport willing to sort of have conversations about this topic and work towards meaningful change. But I think Nike is one of the key players here, and it's to be determined what they do to answer this situation.
I do feel bad for the Nike athletes because it's tough for them to come out and say anything, because that is their sponsor, and track and field athletes, we're not super rich. Sponsorships are alive, so I do feel bad for them in order to really not be able to. I know some of them have been brave and said some stuff because it is their livelihood they're putting on the line, but they're in a tough situation. Speaking of progress or lack thereof, the Diamond League, for me, continues to be a little underwhelming. Last year, they take away the 5K and they replace it with the 3K. Okay, I guess. This year now they eliminate more races. The 200 meter from the final, the discus, the triple jump, and I believe there was one more.
Steeplechase.
Steeplechase, which to me is outlandish. What is the Diamond League doing? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. What I understand is, the Diamond League has not been doing great. It's not as popular as the IAAF or the Diamond League meeting directors would want it to be. And so they're looking to, what do you do when something's unpopular? Well, you try to change things up. And I think in this case, the changes are kind of being driven, as I understand it, from the broadcasters. They're the ones pushing for a 90-minute international broadcast window as opposed to 2 hours, which has been since the inception of the Diamond League in 2010. Then the Diamond League's response to shortening the broadcast window was to cut some of these events out. And that, to me, I just don't totally understand that decision, because they're saying it's not about money, or at least that's not the reason they're saying, that's not what they're justifying the cuts for, even though it does save them some money, not having to hold the discus or the triple jump, or at least meets and pay the prize money. But the discus and triple jump, they went on TV basically at all anyway to begin with. Like, you cut to those maybe a couple times during a meet. They're on there for like tops a minute or two each. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they're cutting them like because of the broadcast window. I think it's more like it doesn't really, if that's why they're cutting them, it doesn't really make sense to say that.
It doesn't. And I take, I'm pretty angry about the 200, because the 100, for me, being around it forever, is the guy that can get up to speed the fastest. Because those guys, they get up to speed and they hold it for probably 40 meters. The guys, the best ones, maybe 50, they're at top speed. The 200, to me, is truly the fastest man on the planet. Because if you can sit there, get up to speed, and then hold it, That's pure God to goodness speed. It's why, for me, Usain Bolt's 200-meter record is a lot better than his 100-meter record. They're both unbelievable, but 1919 is just stupid. So I hate that. And then steeplechase is the one way that, people back in the day were like, let's bring cross country to the track and let's make these immovable objects that athletes will undoubtedly fall over and people will get great entertainment by. And now let's add water. It's just outlandish, but it's also great because it gives your 5K guys a chance to really compete, and then some of your 3K guys to show off speed, and that clash of those two disciplines with barriers. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I think we eliminated one of the more exciting races because we have some really good steeplechase athletes coming up internationally, and now they have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I mean, Conceição Kipruto has been one of the most exciting athletes in any event the last few years. I mean, if you watch his races, he won the World Championships this year by 1/100th of a second. Mm-hmm. Last year, he won the Diamond League final with one shoe. Like, he's had some incredible closes, and it can be a really exciting race. Like, look, one of the best races in the history of American distance running, and one of the most exciting was the Women's World Championship steeple final in 2017 when Emma Coburn and Courtney Frerichs went 1-2. It's really on the women's side, and it's an event that's starting to come into its own. So it's unfortunate to see it cut from the Diamond League, but at the same time, they didn't totally cut it. I mean, they're still going to be holding 5 men's steeples and 5 women's steeples. They're not going to have the official Diamond League points. It won't be contested at the final, but they say that they're going to be keeping the prize money pretty much the same, I think. And so my hope is they're still going to be attracting the top steeplers to all these meets. They're just not going to have the chance to run for points or in the final.
And that, but the goal of the Diamond League is to get that purse in the final. And I don't know if we'll see a lot more athletes do those big events. And it's unfortunate for one of our top sprinters, Noah Lyles, who is a premier 200-meter runner and not really as good as Christian Coleman in the 100. They kind of trade over, hundreds Coleman's, and Noah Lyles is the 200 specialist, really. And it's kind of unfortunate to see that, I know Noah Lyles had a big issue with the 200 being taken away because it's his best event. So we'll see. And and it begs the question, is it time for a new league? Is it time for something new? Tracktown USA was something that was tried, and I thought it was fun. It was really cool to see actual teams competing. And then it kind of just went away. Do you see a new league on the horizon? Is there anyone with a big pocket or a few big pockets willing to make a proper league out of this?
I don't think so. I mean, because we saw it, in the U.S., they tried it with the Tracktown Summer Series, and that flopped. And that had Vin Lanana, who I think is one of the most brilliant people in the sport of track and field. It had significant financial backing. They tried some stuff. It just wasn't popular in the U.S. And I think, honestly, the Diamond League is actually pretty good. I think generally, like, the idea that you have all these athletes come together for a 2-hour meet, a 2-hour broadcast window. I mean, 90 minutes I would actually argue is too short, but 2 hours, that's almost perfect. You go there, it's bang, bang, almost nonstop action. You might have a little dead time between events, but that's where you show, the field action, that sort of thing. I think the Diamond League, as structured, is pretty good, but it's not perfect. It can be improved. I think the bigger issue is just track's not that popular. I mean, if track was a popular sport, I think the Diamond League would be more popular. It's just people don't really care about running very much.
And it's unfortunate. And I mentioned I talked to Corey Crawford, Kadivas Robinson, and Mo Green, and I presented to all of them. What if there was actually teams and an actual league of teams where they do dual meet style stuff and they bring back the old style high school point system, and you get to see the strategic coaches putting the athletes in certain races, making them not even double, but putting them in certain races to compete. And you have to pick week by week, where are we going to get our points here? Where are we going to get our points there? And eventually, every once in a while, you will get that showdown of two of the best in the league going at it. And then there is an all-star race or in a championship. And, I feel like those types of things, if you can sit there and make it, I feel like Americans, the concept of a big smorgasbord, no real teams, Americans don't know who to root for. I think that's the problem. It's like, it's kind of, the names are kind of known, but not. And unless it's Usain Bolt or a big time guy that's really, I feel like if you have teams and you give some people to have pride in, like the New York Speedsters versus the New England Red Feet instead of Red Sox. And you could put a label to it, and boom, you have guys and girls that are projecting those team names. And this week, Noah's going to run the 100 instead of the 200 because he has to go and get points against so-and-so. I think the strategy could be interesting to people if that type of league could be found in a way.
Oh, I mean, I disagree. I think the team concept, I mean, it sounds appealing. It's like, yes, Americans do love their team sports, but yeah, they like golf, they like tennis, and I think as a track and field fan, what I'm most interested in is head-to-head showdowns. You know, I don't want to see Noah Lyles go and race, you know, wait for him to have to race the team with the top 200-meter sprinter. I want him facing the best competition every time, and that's already kind of an issue in the Diamond League with athletes dodging each other. And then the other issue is a lot of these athletes and coaches are very protective over like their schedule and not over racing athletes and that sort of thing. And I just think those are complications that you get in a league that you don't have with the, you know, unaffiliated structure of the Diamond League. Like if you're wondering who to root for, you're watching the Diamond League, just, you know, if you're American, root for the Americans. If you're British, root for the Brits. You know, that's sort of the way I see that breaking down, like the Olympics.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I definitely know that the Diamond League cutting the time and cutting events is not the answer. I wasn't a big fan of the 5K to the 3K because I think the 5K, we have some of our best athletes in the 5K. But again, it's weird because the 10K, if you're a true fan, you barely get to watch a 10K when it's on because they go to commercial, they go to the field events, they do all this types of stuff. So it's going to be something that's difficult to figure out. I hope they get better and add some more stuff to the Diamond League, put the events back eventually.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that making change isn't a bad idea, but I agree with you that the changes they made and the way they're implementing it, I just don't think is really the way to go about it. And I don't really see it making the Diamond League a more exciting product in 2020, which is their ostensible goal.
Yeah. So even though you write about running is not only your passion. You are a football fan. It's unfortunate that you like all Boston and New England teams because I'm a New York fan. So we're going to clash a little, but you like the evil empire of the Patriots.
The Super Bowl champions. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, how many times have you been able to say that? Aren't you tired of saying that in your life?
No, I mean, that's the goal every year. It's you work the players work every year to retain that right. It sounds pretty fun saying it right now.
Yeah, obviously I'm a Jets fan, so you have a lot to say over me. But very recently in a press conference, Tom Brady looked absolutely pissed. He has not, and I can attest to this because even though I'm a Jets fan, I'm not a dummy. I have him on my fantasy team. Early in the year, he was fine. Last 3 games, he's been awful in fantasy and hasn't looked great on the field. Are you getting concerned that Father Time might be catching up with him?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. He is 42 years old, but I think at this, I mean, he was the MVP 2 years ago, and I think he's not going to be getting better at football as he ages, you know, at this point. But I guess, I don't know. Yeah, watching him against Philadelphia last week when they beat the Eagles, he was barely throwing it 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. There were just a lot of dump offs and screens, and even some of those Brady was missing. So that wasn't encouraging. I do think he still has it in him, like, you know, maybe once or twice if they need him to make some plays, make some deep throws downfield, he might be able to do that. But I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if he's worried that he might not be able to be the guy that, you know, you just put the team on your back and have him carry the offense, you know, down the stretch of a big playoff game. And part of that's also because of the weapons. I mean, Rob Gronkowski retired last year. Josh Gordon left. You know, the Patriots got rid of him. Their offensive weapons outside of Edelman, you know, it's pretty bleak. And, you know, Mohamed Sanu just came in. They're trying to incorporate him into the offense. The running game isn't very good. You know, he doesn't hit. Brady is not playing great, but his supporting cast is problematic as well.
I was going to mention that. As much as I hate to defend Tom Brady, I hate the man, but I respect the man. That's just how it is. And, you know, he could leave the Patriots at the age of 63 and go, I want to go to a new team. And if the Jets showed interest, I'd be happy. But I still hate him. But anyway, I was going to mention the weapons because this year going in, Gronk retired. That was fine. Josh Gordon was more than likely going to come back. I think they knew, so they didn't make any big moves. Edelman was there, and they had real big hopes for N'Keal Harry. And then N'Keal Harry gets hurt. And then Josh Gordon leaves. They bring in Antonio Brown, who's more of a disruption than anything. And now they have Mohamed Sanu. I don't care who you are. When your weapons are shuffled that much, it's going to be a struggle. And like you said, the running game has not been what it was in the past years. I don't care who you are. Tom Brady is not Superman. He's not very fast. So he's not running away from anybody. So I do have to defend him a little bit. If he can get on board with Mohamed Sanu and get into a rhythm, that would be the best thing for them. And they look like they might have had it 2 games ago. And last week was just bad. But I guess as long as they keep winning as a fan, you kind of don't care.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if they could win the Super Bowl by 13-3, and they did do that last year, and I'd be fine. That's just as good as winning a Super Bowl 46-0. So I think the thing, like you pointed out, he did have some. There was a rapport, I think, in the Baltimore game. I actually went to that game in Baltimore, and he was going to Sanu a lot. So yeah, I think if Sanu, they can develop a nice relationship. N'Keal Harry, if they incorporate him in, that could work out nicely. And I trust, Josh McDaniels, he's one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. I trust that him and Belichick will be able to figure out a way for this team to win some playoff games because they do it every year. So I have a lot of faith in the system. I just think, I don't want to overreact to one game last weekend against, a pretty good Eagles team, but obviously the offensive performance the last, in that game was not what you want, and neither was it. Same as in Baltimore.
Now, keeping with Brady, because as a fan, this would concern me. I'm not going to lie. Adam Schefter, a few weeks ago, came out and, reported that Brady and his trainer both putting their houses up for sale. Brady plans on voiding out the rest of his contract at the end of the year. And he said that the least likely thing at this point or at the beginning of next season is Tom Brady being in a Patriots uniform. He said that it's kind of 50-50 between retirement or going to another team, and he wouldn't be surprised if Tom Brady's in a different uniform next year. Do you give that any credence, or do you think Brady's either going to retire or be a Patriot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know why. He spent a lot of time. I live in Brookline, Massachusetts, so it's the same town, obviously not the same part of town, but the same town as Tom's house.
Don't sell yourself short, Jonathan. You live next to TB12, don't you?
Yeah, this is actually we're coming from his guest bedroom right now. But no, it's surprising because they built this big house and it's super nice, and then they're putting it on sale. And why would you do that? You would think if he's not sticking around, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm not going to really worry about that till this season's over. If he doesn't, like every year with Gronkowski, people would ask the question like, is he done? Is he going to come back? With all the injuries he had. So I'm sort of looking at it like in true Patriots fan fashion, one day at a time. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would be surprised if he played for another team. Not knowing anything from an insider's perspective, my two ways of thinking would be he either plays for the Patriots or he retires. I'd be shocked if he goes somewhere else because the only team, he's walking away from the greatest football coach of all time and an offensive coordinator that knows him in and out. Why would he go to some other random team? And how many of the teams would he even be able to go to? Like, they would need to be an instant Super Bowl contender for Brady to even want to go to them.
But let's be honest, he has a smoking hot supermodel wife that is probably looking at him going, Tom, I'm tired of only going to beaches to take photo shoots. I want to live on one. And there are really no summer hot all the time beaches in the New England area. So here are certain teams you can go play for. I'm done. Let's go. That wouldn't surprise me. Or retire. She's probably telling him because she's been on his back, noted for years about be done, Tom. What else do you have to prove? Be done. And there is the theory that Philip Rivers is going to retire and he's going to step right into LA.
Really? I haven't really thought about that one. That was when you started mentioning beaches. I'm like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I don't know. I mean, I think if Giselle, again, not knowing the Brady bunch and family dynamics, but I would think, if anything, from what I've seen, she would be urging him to retire and that they could move to some nice beachfront locale as opposed to him continuing to go out there and leave himself susceptible to concussions and other injuries. I would think she'd be pushing in the direction of just hanging him up.
More than likely, but she probably said, you're allowed to go to LA if you still want to play, but we're going somewhere, not here. Last thing about the Patriots, the offensive concerns have to be a little concerning. The defense is playing as good as it's ever played. But with teams like Baltimore, Houston, even the Chiefs, even though they fall off a little bit, Mahomes isn't 100% healthy. But there are certain teams in the AFC that are looking to threaten the Patriots. Are you concerned with their chances of winning a championship this year, or are you as confident a Patriots fan as ever?
I mean, midway through last year, I was pretty concerned. I think after the Pittsburgh game, when they lost in Week 15, I was like, well, this team's not winning the Super Bowl. They're just the way they're playing. They can't do it. And then they just get on a roll in the playoffs and they roll through everyone. I think the Patriots are in the same position this year as they've been the last, basically the entire decade and most of last decade too. They'll probably get a first round bye. They'll face someone like probably Houston or the Colts in round one. That's if they can get the 1 seed. If they can't get the 1 seed and they have to face KC, maybe that's a trickier issue. But they'll have a winnable home game in the divisional round, and then in the AFC Championship, they'll have to beat a really good team, and they'll have to beat a really good team to go to win the Super Bowl. So I think they're in a pretty similar position, and I think that they can get it turned around. But but the way Baltimore is playing right now, I think you have to say Baltimore's the best team in the AFC. I think the Patriots can get to that level by the middle of January, especially if the AFC title game, looking way ahead, is in Foxborough rather than Baltimore. But certainly, I would say that's the real team I'm worried about. And then KC, if they can get Mahomes healthy and get together a little bit.
The one thing that I do know about Tom Brady is whenever we get these moments of, is it done? Is he done? He'll go and string off the next 4 games, throw 10 touchdowns, a single pick, and have like a QBR of like 7,030. So every time this happens, he goes and he proves everybody wrong. So for your sake, I hope he does do what I just said. And for my sake, I hope he decides to retire now.
And the 2-decade torture of the New York Jets.
Listen, it was Marino, Jim Kelly, Brady. It's got to be the Jets' turn next. It has to be.
Do you think Donald, as a Jets fan, do you think Donald's the guy?
I hope Darnold's the guy. I'm a seasoned Jets fan. There is no such thing as the guy when it's the Jets. If his name isn't Namath, he's not the guy until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
But all right, that will conclude this episode of the Sports Opinions Podcast. Jonathan, I had a blast.
Yeah, no, this was great, Alex. Thanks for thanks for having me on. And if you want to follow any of my stuff, at jgault13 on Twitter. I don't have an Instagram, but go to letsrun.com if you want, to read any of my writing. We have a lot of coverage this week of the NCAA Cross Country Championships in Indiana. I'll be out there this weekend. So that's, if you like what you heard today, that's where you can hear me moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah, again, Jonathan Gault of letsrun.com. Definitely go there, find his work. Follow his Twitter, especially if you're a running fan, because you will get some of the best collegiate pro running information instantly. He's very good at getting this stuff out there. Again, I'm Alex Cuesta, host of the Sports Opinions podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram, SportsOpinions30. Visit the Facebook page by searching, and wherever you are listening, whether it's Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, YouTube, anywhere virtually you can find a podcast, leave a good rating, leave a good review. It pushes this podcast up higher so more people can get access to it, and my really awesome guests that I have on weekly can make their voices heard. So again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one, everybody.